Tatsuya Ichihashi buried the naked body of 22-year-old Lindsay Ann.
After a very bungled start to my daughter's murder,
Ichihashi went to great lengths to avoid detection, including mutilating his nose.
We've waited 4.5 years to get justice for Lindsay.
In March 2007, 22-year-old Lindsay Ann Hawker, an English teacher in Tokyo, set off for a routine lesson with a man named Tatsuya Ichihashi. What seemed like a simple tutoring session turned into a brutal nightmare. Lindsay would never return, and Ichihashi would vanish, leaving behind a chilling crime that would haunt her family and the world for years. This is the tragic story of Lindsay Hawker's murder and the search for her killer. The world can be a dangerous place, even for those who approach it with kindness and optimism.
hoping to get justice for our daughter.
For 22-year-old Lindsay Ann Hawker, life was just beginning. In 2006, she left her home in Coventry, England, to take up a position as an English teacher in Japan. Fresh out of university, Lindsay was bright, adventurous, and eager to embrace the world beyond her doorstep. Teaching English in Japan wasn't just a job, it was a dream come true. She saw it as an opportunity to experience life in a new culture, meet interesting people, and grow into the woman she wanted to become.
No one knows how we feel, unless you have lost children yourself.
Her parents, Bill and Julia Hawker, were immensely proud, though they worried, as parents do, about her safety so far from home. But the life Lindsay envisioned would never come to fruition. Her journey abroad, filled with so much promise, would end in unimaginable horror.
My two daughters, who have constantly been driving our campaign forward.
Lindsay Hawker was a natural teacher. Her friends described her as gentle, patient, and warm. She had a way of making people feel at ease, a quality that drew others to her. At the University of Leeds, she studied biology, but her passion for people and cultures ultimately led her to teach. When she arrived in Tokyo, Lindsay embraced her new life with open arms. She lived in a shared apartment with other expatriates and quickly bonded with her co-workers at Nova, one of Japan's largest English language schools. She loved exploring Tokyo's vibrant streets, immersing herself in its unique blend of ancient tradition and modern innovation. But Lindsay was also careful. She kept her family informed about her activities and shared her plans with her roommates. She was cautious, mindful of being a young woman in a foreign country. That caution, however, would not be enough to save her.
The chief officer told me they would get the man.
Tatsuya Ichihashi was not like Lindsay. Born into a wealthy family in Chiba Prefecture, he had every advantage growing up. His parents were both medical professionals, and he was given a privileged upbringing. But despite this, Ichihashi's life spiraled into isolation and dysfunction. He was withdrawn, avoiding social interaction, and failing to hold down steady work. His neighbors described him as a strange and reclusive man, someone who barely made eye contact and rarely spoke. Beneath his quiet demeanor, however, was a darker side, a growing obsession with control and domination. Ichihashi's encounter with Lindsay wasn't a chance meeting. He had been watching her, studying her routines. His obsession with her began long before he approached her in the cafe. On March 25th, 2007, Lindsay and Ichihashi crossed paths. She had spent the afternoon at a cafe with friends, enjoying a quiet moment before returning to her busy teaching schedule. As she prepared to leave, Ichihashi approached her. He introduced himself as a prospective student interested in learning English. He was polite and somewhat awkward, disarming her with his apparent shyness. Lindsay, ever professional and kind, agreed to exchange contact information for a future lesson. She likely didn't see anything threatening about the encounter. But as Lindsay left the cafe, Ichihashi followed her. He trailed her for nearly an hour, finally stopping her to ask for water. Nervously, she agreed, leading him to her apartment. Once there, her roommates noted his unusual demeanor, but Lindsay reassured them, saying he was a harmless potential student. She made it clear she wouldn't let him stay long. This would be the beginning of a nightmare. The next morning, Ichihashi called Lindsay, asking for an English lesson at his apartment. Lindsay, professional and trusting, agreed. Before she left, she told her roommates where she was going, promising to return shortly. Ichihashi's apartment was a small, dingy space, a stark contrast to the polite image he had presented. Once Lindsay stepped inside, she realized something was wrong. The air was heavy, the room cluttered and chaotic. Lindsay began the lesson, but it quickly became clear that Ichihashi had no interest in learning English. He attacked her suddenly and brutally, binding her wrists with plastic zip ties. Lindsay fought back, her screams muffled by Ichihashi's hand. The struggle was intense. Bruises and scratches on her body later revealed just how desperately she fought for her life. For hours, Lindsay endured a nightmare few can imagine. Ichihashi sexually assaulted her repeatedly, his actions driven by a twisted desire for control and domination. He wasn't just a killer, he was a predator, reveling in her fear and pain. At some point during the night, Ichihashi strangled Lindsay. He later claimed her death was accidental, a result of panic during the assault. But the evidence told a different story. The marks on her neck, the signs of prolonged struggle. Everything pointed to a deliberate act of murder. When Lindsay's lifeless body lay before him, Ichihashi faced a grim reality. Rather than call for help or surrender to authorities, he chose to conceal his crime in the most grotesque way imaginable. Ichihashi bought a large amount of sand in a bathtub, dragging Lindsay's body into the cramped space of his apartment. He filled the tub with sand, attempting to muffle the smell of decomposition and delay discovery. It was a macabre tableau, a stark reminder of the lengths to which he would go to hide his crime. Lindsay's roommate, alarmed by her lengthened absence, contacted her employer and the police. By the afternoon of March 26th, officers were at Ichihashi's door. When they knocked, he refused to answer. As police forced their way in, Ichihashi fled barefoot, scaling a balcony and disappearing into the streets. Inside, the officers found the bathtub. Beneath the sand lay Lindsay's body, bruised, battered, and lifeless. The sight was enough to shake even the most seasoned investigators. Ichihashi's escape sparked a nationwide manhunt.
To draw this rat out of his hole because he must be hiding somewhere.
His face was plastered across Japan, on television, in newspapers, and on wanted posters. But he was resourceful, using his knowledge of the city and its outskirts to stay one step ahead of the authorities. For more than 2 years, Ichihashi lived as a fugitive. He altered his appearance with plastic surgery, changing the shape of his nose and jaw to evade recognition. He worked odd jobs, avoided public places, and stayed in constant motion. His ability to elude capture frustrated law enforcement and deepened the anguish of Lindsay's family.
What do they think, or where do they think they can look, or what can they do?
Back in England, the Hawker family was devastated. Lindsay's parents, Bill and Julia, along with her sisters, Lisa and Louise, became vocal advocates for justice. They traveled to Japan multiple times, working with police and using the media to keep Lindsay's story alive.
We've never given in for our daughter.
Their grief was palpable, but so was their determination. They refused to let Lindsay's name fade into obscurity. "We'll never stop fighting for her," Bill Hawker said in one interview. Their strength inspired others, turning Lindsay's story into a rallying cry for justice. On November 10th, 2009, Ichihashi's freedom came to an end. A tip from a vigilant citizen led police to a ferry terminal in Osaka, where he was arrested. In custody, Ichihashi initially denied his involvement in Lindsay's death, but the evidence against him was overwhelming. DNA from the crime scene, including the sand used to conceal Lindsay's body, linked him definitively to the murder. During his trial in 2011, Ichihashi claimed remorse. He apologized to Lindsay's family and said he wanted to atone for his actions. But his words rang hollow. His calculated actions after the murder, his escape, his plastic surgeries, his years on the run, revealed a man more concerned with self-preservation than remorse. The court sentenced him to life in prison. For Lindsay's family, it was a bittersweet moment.
Lindsay loved Japan, and you have not let her down. Thank you.
Justice had been served, but it could never bring Lindsay back. Lindsay's murder left an indelible mark on those who knew her and on the public at large. Her family became tireless advocates for victim rights, using their platform to raise awareness about the dangers faced by women traveling abroad. In Japan, Lindsay's case spurred changes in how missing persons cases were handled, particularly those involving foreign residents. Her story became a cautionary tale, a reminder of the fragility of trust and the unpredictable nature of evil. For her family, Lindsay's memory remains a beacon of light amid the darkness of her death. They remember her not for the way she died, but for the way she lived, with kindness, courage, and an unyielding zest for life.